Gambling, beer, and guns. These wouldn't be things you would expect inmates to have access to, but they did at this jail. An undercover cell phone video would be released to the public in 2013. It would show complete lawlessness. One inmate was proudly showing off his black .45 caliber handgun with a fistful of money in the other hand. They were also seen shooting dice and taking bets. Rampant intravenous drug use was also captured, which is too extreme and graphic to even be shown. Another man, Arthur Johnson, took a video of himself waltzing around Bourbon Street when he was supposed to be in jail. It was found that he was entering and exiting the jail through a faulty emergency exit. Some believe that staff allowed Johnson to do this, and he was possibly paying them off. This was all revealed as part of a 2009 federal investigation. These videos were an integral part of the investigation into the deplorable conditions at the facility. That led to a federal consent decree mandate that would last for years in order to improve the conditions at Orleans Parish Prison. Before this incident, an even bigger scandal would rock the jail. August 29th, 2005. Tragedy would strike this city. Hurricane Katrina was a once-in-a-lifetime storm.
We're under our emergency operations plan, so we're only, and we've been working with the police department, so we're going to keep our prisoners where they belong.
And as the water rose, deputies abandoned their posts. There was no plan in place for these inmates, and they were left to die with no hope. One inmate described his experience. We was calling down to the guys in the cells under us, talking to them every couple of minutes. They were crying, they were scared. The one that I was cool with, he was saying, "I'm scared, I feel like I'm about to drown." After several days, staff did return, only to evacuate them to a nearby elevated interstate, where they would remain for 4 days in the blistering hot August sun. One report noted that 517 men were unaccounted for, which authorities said possibly escaped, but some believed they perished in the storm. We'll never know the exact death toll. When asked about these reports, Sheriff Marlon Gusman said, "None of it was true. Don't rely on crackheads, cowards, and criminals to say what the story is." On this episode of Chasing Crime, we'll be taking a look at the Orleans Parish Prison, also known as the OPP, and later known as the Orleans Justice Center. We'll investigate the death, destruction, and terror that many have endured at this jail. Let's get into it. Throughout its 186-year history, Orleans Parish Prison has existed in several structures. The first facility opened in 1837, closing in 1895. At the first facility, inmates would be forced outdoors during the day in the hot New Orleans sun, and at night would sleep on the concrete floors with just a blanket. The current facility opened in 2015 with 1,438 beds. The cost to construct this facility was $145 million. This was met with significant pushback from the community, not only for the cost, but because they had lost confidence in authorities to do their job. We'll see why shortly. New Orleans is in the process of building another facility called Phase 3. This will focus on mental health inmates in this system. It will also have a hefty price tag of $60 million. What's even more telling is that they plan on using $36 million of Katrina recovery funds from FEMA to pay for the construction. The new facility now goes by the name Orleans Justice Center. The facility is located in central New Orleans, directly next to the birthplace of the most famous jazz musician of all time, Louis Armstrong. New Orleans could hardly be called a safe city. In 2022, it topped the ranking for the most murders in the United States, more than St. Louis and Chicago. One article called it the murder capital. The men and women accused of these murders are some of the inmates being housed in the Orleans Justice Center. Some of these inmates, if sentenced to prison, could end up in Louisiana's most notorious prison, Angola. But what about inside of the facility? What goes on there? Nothing good. A fight in June 2022 would occur at the facility, and one man, Philip Soublé, was dead from blunt force injuries. After an investigation into the incident, it was determined that it was a justifiable homicide. It was determined that Soublé attacked another inmate with a shank. The other inmate responded with his own weapon and ended the life of Soublé. 3 other inmates were charged in the attack of Drell Jack. Just 3 days after this incident, another inmate, Chad Nyland, would take his own life. While going through heroin withdrawal, he would jump from the top level of the pod onto the concrete floor below. Another inmate, Robert Retman, also took his own life in 2020 at the facility. He was at the jail on an armed robbery charge. Anthony Hunt, a murder suspect who was involved in a police standoff in New Orleans, was found dead in his cell in 2021. He was later confirmed to have died from a drug overdose. It seems drugs and untreated mental health issues are ongoing problems at this prison. Before we move on to a couple of protests that occurred at the facility in 2022, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss any of my new content. In August 2022, a major protest occurred at the facility. At first, the protest was peaceful. Inmates were seen doing the limbo, but it would soon turn destructive. Inmates destroyed doors, cameras, and other items in the pod. Offenders tripped the sprinkler system, flooding the unit. 44 inmates were involved. Deodorant tops were used to stop the doors from closing fully, allowing them to exit their cell, even if they were closed from the module control room. In order to get the unit under control, staff deployed flashbangs to gain compliance. The main complaint voiced by the inmates was the amount of lockdown time that was being enforced. Later, in November 2022, another disturbance was reported with similar results. It seems these incidents are a reoccurring problem at this facility. The sheriff, Susan Hudson, said staffing was the issue. She said that inmates must be locked down for longer times because they have no staff to work the units. She would later announce that 4 captains at the jail would be resigning. Combined, the 4 staff members had 100 years of experience with the department. Was this a move to cover her own wrongdoing? Or were these supervisors not doing their job? Hudson was elected as a prison reformer and promised to improve conditions at the prison. She has been in office since December 2021 and has continued to see issues with conditions at the prison. The previous sheriff, Marlene Gusman, oversaw many of the scandals at the jail, including the Hurricane Katrina disaster and federal lawsuits. He was the sheriff for 17 years. Problems with staff are rampant at the facility. Breon Jackson was arrested for smuggling drugs into the facility in 2019. She admitted that she was paid $1,150 to deliver the contraband. Another staff member thought it was a good idea to take an inmate out of the facility to a woman's house to spend time with her. The staff member, Gregory Jacques, was a maintenance worker and in charge of the custody of the inmate. He would later face criminal charges. What about infamous inmates at this facility? Let's take a look. Robert Durst is more widely known in California than Louisiana, but the convicted murderer was apprehended in New Orleans by the FBI and was transported to the Orleans Parish prison in 2015. He would be charged in Louisiana with felon in possession of a firearm and possession of a firearm with a controlled substance. Durst would spend months at the jail while the case was ongoing. Eventually, the charges were dropped, but the federal government picked up the case. He was convicted federally and sentenced to 85 months in prison. He would later die in a California prison. There have even been a few celebrities to spend time at the jail. Nicolas Cage went on a drunken tear on Bourbon Street in 2011. He would bond out shortly after his intake. Russell Brand has also spent time in Orleans. He posted bond from the jail for destroying a photographer's camera. He would later tweet about it, saying, "Since Steve Jobs died, I cannot bear to see anyone use an iPhone irreverently. What I did was a tribute to his memory." The OPP has a terrible reputation and is regularly ranked as one of the worst facilities in the United States. Recent deaths and protests have added to this long-standing status. This was another Chasing Crime Profile. Drop a comment below and tell me your thoughts on this prison. Thanks for watching. See you next time.